But yeah, you can go ahead and talk a little bit about yourself and plug your socials and stuff, man.
What's up, guys? My name is Yair. I mostly do like MMA and mixed martial arts stuff, but I wanted to give chess out a try, so Coach Nick hit me up and reached out and gave me this awesome lesson. And if you guys need lessons, definitely hit him up and join his Discord. And I've always seen people play chess, and I've always thought it was cool. I never like understood it, and I just think it's a beautiful game. And yeah, my socials will be down below in the description.
All right, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for tuning into the lesson. And I definitely did not ask him to promote what I do here, so that's really sincere, because then it defends your pawn. And the reason you don't want to go bishop to d3 is because you're blocking in development on this side of the board. So that's why bishop c4 is a good move, because it also targets this. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on. Knight f6. This one is where it becomes the four knights, typically, because now there is pressure on the center of the board. Each knight is attacking and defending a pawn.
Okay.
Now bishop c4 will come out. Bishop c5. Castles. Castles. You can also do this and this. d3, d6. Remember in last lesson when I said anytime that e4 is going to be played followed by e5, white should be aware of when d6 is going to come out in the position.
Yeah.
You've got a pretty good pawn chain here as the black pieces, and there's a pretty good pawn chain here as the white pieces. So in this particular configuration, after we've done castled, let's go ahead and say that these are the moves that we've played. And both players castle. Now we've got something pretty interesting going on here. You see how the board kind of funneled itself towards the king side? Like we kind of can assume that all of the action is going to happen from the e-file over.
Yeah.
Because this is kind of like creating like a no man's land.
Uh-huh.
So this is actually kind of a little bit interesting for the white bishop here, the light colored bishop for white, because after a series of pawn moves that come out over time, this bishop could end up getting trapped. So we'll have to make sure at some point in time we do play a3. It doesn't have to be right now. I think if black was going to lash out with a move like a6 so that they could go b5, and then you would be forced to go to b3, or you could go to bishop d5 and trade off. You could trade off either way. If you end up with that situation, it would be better to trade and take with the pawn. That way you are threatening the knight here, right? But let's also think about the beginning type of principles where we kind of should be thinking about valuing the bishop a little bit higher than the knight. So that's not the greatest move of all time. So after you've been forced to move to a square like back here, right, then if you do not respond to the furthering of the pawns with a move like a3, a4, then the bishop will end up getting trapped.
Okay.
So that is the one thing that white needs to be aware of on this side of the board, as well as black with their dark colored bishop. There's not a whole lot of space for you to go here if you were to start lashing out. So right now, this is where the bishop should be retreating. Because after this, the only saving grace right now that black has is if this pawn is to march forward. If this pawn is to march forward, a3 is to march forward, then the knight can just simply take this pawn. So a little bit more development has to happen before you can fully trap this bishop here. But let's say after we go with a move like, they're probably going to go ahead and play this move, right? Maybe they will, maybe they won't. I would. Then now you move the knight. You're going to trade. We're beginning level chess, right? So they're going to trade.
Okay.
And then takes forces the knight away. There's only some areas where the knight can go. You can undevelop the knight, which undevelop is kind of going to be like a term for like going back to its home square or retreating in territory. And sometimes when you have to do that, you have to do it to save the piece, but you lose some tempo, some initiative there, because now if we were to do that, if we were to do either of those moves, now our bishop has the potential of getting trapped again.
Mm-hmm.
So it does matter where you retreat to. You can go here and try and prompt a trade, which wouldn't be too bad in this position, because now we've got to force the rook off of its home square and the defense of a3. So there are two moves to be played: rook to b1 or rook to a2. What do you think would be the better move for the rook?
I would think b1.
Okay. And why, before I tell you if it's right or wrong, why do you think that?
I would just guess that bishop right there as a threat. Like, I see that bishop at d4, like moving over, seeing if it could, take that one out if it comes over.
Okay, I like it. I like it a lot. I like what I would say is that's not wrong. I don't think that's wrong. What I think is some of the things that I was thinking of is try and trade down, because the bishop's going to be forced back to the idea of retreating or trading, right? Because it can't go here because it'll be taken, and it can't go here because it'll be taken. So you're once again asking the bishop, what are you up to, pal? So once a move like that occurs, it's kind of time to figure something out for the black position here. Like, what are we going to do to save our tempo and everything? Because this move is probably going to come out. And then if not, if the bishop goes ahead and defends, right, we took care of the knight issue earlier. So it has the ability to go all the way back. And that's probably what it should do to avoid incurring any more movements, right? Because now we've moved the piece multiple times, and we know from our last lesson that is one of the worst principles, or excuse me, one of the best principles to adhere to, and one of the worst ways to play the game.
Okay.
So now that we've done this, we can go ahead and put this bishop on this diagonally any way. Now we have this threat, can march forward, but after we get ready to develop this queen, black's going to have to start making some activity on the board. So they're going to have to think about developing their bishop. So maybe if we were to march the pawn, right, something like that, I think at the beginning level, this looks like a pretty enticing move. That way, the idea of pushing, right, once another beginner, because we have doubled pawns right here, which is bad for the white position. So instead of taking, because that's just going to be just an even trade, and the board gets even more empty, right? And then we can see, and we've also fixed our pawn structure, by the way, in doing so. So that's going to be better for white. That's going to be better for white to play like that. So what the better move for black probably would be is to push the pawn forward.
Okay.
Now this bishop is defending this pawn. All this bishop needs is just one friend. Maybe bring the queen. We could bring the queen. It actually doesn't seem like a bad idea at all, really, if you think about it. So then that equalizes the trade again, and then what's different about it this time around? Let's move the rook there. Okay, so let's take a look at this. Okay, we'll ignore it again.
Okay.
And then, like, you wouldn't do, like, to anybody that's watching this and to anybody that gets this and to me including, this, you're probably not going to play like this.
Mm-hmm.
But now we see this, and see that big old blunder?
Yeah.
It's all about, you have to calculate out the trade. You really do. You have to calculate out the trade. You need extra. What does Gotham Chess say? You need two more attackers than they have defenders to successfully take a position or take any piece off the board. So that's not what there are. 2 defenders to 2 attackers. So that's just not good. That's what you need to. That's one of the biggest things that a beginner will easily fall for. And it's not really like fall for as much as it's like, it's not like the white position is trying to trick black into doing that. I mean, fall for is in like your mind can slip into this tunnel vision. So we always need to count things out. We have the privilege of being online to where we can do the arrows. Because once you do the arrows, it's really easy. You just count it out. You figure it in your head. It becomes so much clearer. So when you don't have the arrows, this is where we'll end off on this example, and we'll go to the next position. But when you don't have the arrows, if you're playing over the board, etc., still try and draw them out. Definitely. If you need to sit there and draw it out in your head, do it. You'll only come out better. And if you figure it wrong, then you know where to figure better. E4, E5, knight F3, knight C6, bishop C4. Okay, so bishop C5. There is another move that you can play here. And at the beginning level, going against another beginner may happen, it may not. I'm going to shoot for it might not. You can go ahead and play H6 if you want.
Oh, okay.
After white develops the bishop here, if you want to play H6, there's really no harm, no foul in that. Because after you do play bishop C5, what if they go ahead and march up here, and then you counter with something like this, and now we're here, right? What are we back into? Fried liver.
Oh, okay.
So the best move here is definitely castle.
Oh,
okay. So we're right back into that fried liver thing that we talked about last week. But that's not what's going to happen in this position. We're going to go with the fastest castling. Okay, so after that, bishop C5, you're going to castle. Mm-hmm. And then you have to develop the knight there. That way you can castle. And then so what's really important about this to understand in terms of tempo and development is, so black had to develop this knight to free up the space for the king to castle. So white's already castled. They're already good on that. Now they can just focus on developing the rest of their back rank, opening up and connecting the rooks. That's why they move with the knights before bishops, right? So now that our knight's out, we can focus on getting this pawn up, and we can focus on getting the bishop out to where it may want to go. We can even fianchetto if we wanted to, because this side of the board is a lot more free and open. So the castle, d3, d6. Here's d6 that we talked about coming out again. We need to watch this. Once again, we've gotten into the area of creating a no man's land kind of on this side of the board. This is where all of the action is going to be occurring.
Oh, okay.
Here is where we'll turn on the eval bar, and we'll turn on the lines, and I'll turn off only coach for you.
Okay.
Because what I have notated may just be different than what Stockfish agrees with.
Okay.
Here is what are you able to see the lines?
I can't see the lines right now.
Okay, if you go to click on analysis, there should be plus 0.03, plus 0.2, plus 0.28.
Yeah, there they are. They just popped up.
Okay, cool. So the top one is going to be the one that we'll be going by, and that's basically just it for this. As we get further and further on down the road, we'll consider the second and third options and whatnot. But right now, we will use that one because this is definitely the best move. 100%. I didn't need Stockfish to see that one, but now it's the response to that. So that says bishop takes f6 is going to be the best move in this position. Or you can go bishop h4. It gives a little bit of the eval bar to black if you go bishop e3.
Okay.
Now this is interesting because it's kind of a known rule of thumb, right? That the knight is just not worth as much as the bishop.
Mm-hmm.
So in this position, why is it better to take the knight and give up the bishop pair?
Oh man, I think that's a tough one. I mean, I honestly think I'd give up the bishop. I just think because that knight could be dangerous. I feel like in this situation, because I feel like if you moved up any one of those pawns, they could just take it out.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's not bad at all. I don't hate that. I don't hate that because this flank pawn, I'm going to tell you why I agree with that. This flank pawn has already been developed, so that's one step ahead. If you are to go here, then you get even more development, right? This pawn is going to come forward, and we're going to be talking about in the last example what could happen. Well, the bishop could get trapped just as well over here, but this time around, it's a lot scarier because you've got to start opening up your king side, and this is devastating. After a move like, let's say, I don't know, what if they go ahead and march down? Look at the white eval bar going up. It shows, right? It does show that it's equalizing a little bit, but this is really important because as a beginner, this is a tough situation to be in. You're forced to move the knight, and things aren't really looking that good for you because you want to get this flank pawn moved at some point too, but now it's almost too late because of what we've got going on in g4, right? So that is there's a lot to be unpacked with that particular situation, how to go up and win material and positioning in that type of setup. So now after we've done this and we take and they take, why this was so good to take the knight here is because this knight has some pretty good mobility towards attacking these pawns here, and the queen can get right up in the way as well. So getting rid of this knight definitely does get rid of one attacker on that side of the board. And it also now prevents a lot of development from this knight in particular, right? Now this knight is trapped basically because it does not have the ability to go to a square that's safe unless it undevelops. So that's pretty much what that's all about there. And now this move is going to look pretty appealing. Trapping the knight to the queen. And then from that point, it's going to take some serious counterplay to kind of combat that. That's kind of what we're thinking about with that there. That's why in this particular situation, it definitely was better to trade off the bishop. It made White's situation a little bit better, and it also did make Black's situation a little bit better. And by seeing that, do you understand why the eval bar is still dead even?
No, I'm not too sure.
Okay. Basically because of that. Because it improved both players' positions.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It made White's king a little bit safer, and it aided in the development of Black's side of the board.
Oh.
Essentially. So we've gotten through that one, and now let's go with this puzzle. So we see right now, I'm going to turn off I'll leave turn the lines off. There we go. All right, we'll leave the eval bar on. So you can look at the eval bar, but please do not check out the notation. Knight c6 check, right? So this fork here is what is very, very appealing to a beginner. Anytime you get into this situation and you find that. But sometimes there are other things to do, other things to look for. So this is kind of where people, especially Gotham Chess, says look at the entire board, right? Analyze the entire board. There are 64 squares that are affected by the movement of one singular piece on the board. All 64 squares are affected by every piece that moves, every single time. And it's all about figuring that out, right? So now we have the opportunity to, let's not take this rook. Let's think about finding another check. This is a good check because it is, there it is, defended. So we've got a couple different options. We can go back up. But then it's just like pretty devastating right there. So we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. So we're going to go to what looks just a little bit safer, but it's more or less forced, c2. And then now the knight comes in to deliver another check. And the reason that we deliver the other check is we were to do it with the rook, then the king is able to get into safety. Okay. So we go knight to b4 check. And we can still go this way. We can still go this way, but things are, look at that, mate in one. See, that's why you don't do that. So you think about it, figure it in your mind. You do king d2. Whoops. King d2. And then let's try and find another check. Rook to h2 check. Best move in the position is king to d1. We're running out of squares to go to. And look, this is another thing that you can slip into as a beginner because there's no eval bar on the board. when you're playing in a real game, right? So you might just take this. And while it doesn't really, like, mate's not going to be on the board anymore, probably. It is still on the board, but mate and 9, and that's a lot. I'm going to tell you, mate and 9 is a lot harder to find than mate and 2. But you just think about it a little bit. How do you realign the pieces? How can you make your rooks really, really powerful? What we've got right now is rooks on the 7th, right? This is black's 7th rank, and that's good. We deliver the check on H1. And then now, because you've done the thing called building your mating net, that's what we'll call that, the only square for the king to go to is king d2. Where the rook on the back rank for black will come and deliver the checkmate. Because this pawn defends it right here. This pawn is going this way, right? So they can't take backwards. This knight covers this escape square. This rook covers all of those escape squares, and this pawn covers this escape square. And so that's basically what to think about when it comes to solving puzzles, most primarily. But just a thing about in games in general. Start thinking about it. Just start thinking about figuring out the calculation of it. It's going to be a lot easier as time goes on, but the more you start trying to put yourself to the test, the better you will have the ability to determine how good you're doing, right? So definitely think about those things. Calculation only comes with time. It really does. But getting familiar with the notation is another good thing about it. If you really, really want to, start taking notes every game you play. Notate the moves, and then after the game, reflect on it before you put it into the eval. And then once you do that, make sure you understand what the improvement engine is trying to tell you, more or less. Because, like, we can't go and try and play every move like Stockfish because our memories are not that powerful, right? Everything that has ever happened in the world of chess and recorded in terms of what's ever been recorded is in all of these engines and all of these databases. That would be absurd for a human to do. I mean, that's why if you ask me, that's really kind of the sole reason behind the Hans Niemann controversy, is because his ability to play that many moves so consistently like the engine is unfathomable. The greatest chess players of all time have not been capable of that. Magnus Carlsen, 8-time world champion. He knows some crazy stuff. He knows things like from games that were played in the early 1900s, right? But that's still not enough. That's still not enough to beat Stockfish. Wow. And that's the thing. Nobody plays like Stockfish. That's how you can spot a cheater. And that's what you need to tell yourself when you're learning the game. Nobody plays like Stockfish. Use it as a tool, a supplementary tool alongside the database when you get to that point. But also just think about, like, if you think about what I'm going to tell you, how we'll end off this lesson, think about what you can do to not play bad moves rather than to try and play the best moves. For this level, for about 400 to 800, just stop blundering so often, and then you'll understand why. So if you figure out why you're blundering, what makes it a blunder, then you'll do a lot better with with not blundering. And then you'll start to get into why the move is good. I think the first step is why the move is bad. And then the next step is why the correct move was good.